we are going to basically start construction of our egg basket, and we need to make a kind of a holding pattern for the ribs, and this is a God's eye pattern, which is basically crisscross on the connecting areas to your frame. So basically, I'm using the cordage or the bark from the willow, so it's very self-sustaining, obviously. And so all you do is just strip it off. You know, the greener the willow, the better, because it's easy. It strips off much easier. I think I've explained that. So I'm gonna find a nice long piece, and this will dry out and tighten. And what we want is, get a nice long piece here. And so we just want a nice long piece, and I want something kind of decorative. So I will go ahead and start off our God's eye. And basically, let's see, I'm on my camera enough. Let me back up a little bit so it's easier to see. Okay. So basically, all I really need to do is I just need to kind of wrap this on the crossways just a couple of times, and I want to lay the bark out flat, okay, like this, and then I want to circle around, and I want to do another crisscross. I want to crisscross it on the other junction here where they cross here and here, and there's no special tie or anything. You're just going to use just the friction just to lay everything down. Okay, and then once you've got that going, then you go around one limb onto the next limb. So I went around one limb, and then I'm gonna go to this next limb that actually has a small limb attached to it there. I'm gonna try to work with that, and then around to the next limb. And then we're going to continue this pattern all the way. We have 4 points of wrap, 4 points of wrapping. 1, 2, 3, 4 under my thumb here. And then we just keep it going. And we spread it out as we need to. And this limb, okay, yeah, it's very interesting how tough this willow bark is. And so we're just going to continue this pattern and until we reach the end of our lashing here. Going around. See, I'm gonna stop here. So I'm just gonna kind of loosely splice these new lashings in. I'm not gonna do anything real fancy other than create a half hitch, which just goes around, and I wrap. Now, as we continue developing the structure of the basket here, we want all of our loose ends, most of our loose ends on the inside. Okay, the outside should be nice and pretty and flawless and la la la, but we want these lashings to end on the inside here. Most of them on this one here end on the inside, and so I can later on when it's dry I can clean it up and just kind of snip. Again, out in the bush, I don't care as long as the basket is sturdy and it'll hold together. Don't care how ugly or pretty it looks. I mean, I might get rid of obviously extra long things that might get in the way, but if you're trying to make a heirloom project, you know, you're going to take much more time. There's going to be much more refinement, much more shaping going on to get like a really nice, aesthetically pleasing looking basket or project or piece of work, piece of art, for the most part. Okay, so grab another piece here, and I'm gonna use. I like ending with the thinner pieces when they start, because sometimes these will strip down from very thick to very thin, and I'll go ahead and split this off. That'll be an extra piece here, but I'm gonna start with the thin end here, like this, and again, from where I started, I'm just gonna lash this over. All right, again, so it's on the inside, and I just want to kind of keep that down, but I want to wrap it around on itself. Nothing fancy. I don't have to tie anything down. Everything's just gonna, when it dries up, it'll kind of cinch up a little bit too. But I want to use the friction of the bark to tie in on itself. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue my my wrapping pattern. Again, I'm going to keep it flat, and I want the outside of the bark, the white side of the bark, just for aesthetics, don't have to be that way, on the outside, facing the outside, just for aesthetics. No reason in particular. So that's basically how you splice in a new piece. You can even tie down pieces as they get straggled in. But you know, I'm just going to continue my wrap with my lashings here until I match the width of the piece of this side here. So I should have enough lashings that I should be able to do that. But I'm gonna keep on wrapping this until this piece is done, then I'm gonna splice in another piece. And so we want something that's gonna be about the same area as the one here, as this one here. So keep on going. All right, so I'm worried about this piece here. I guess I could try to lash it down tighter, but I don't want a huge bump. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it at an angle so it'll kind of hopefully kind of round off a bit. It may poke through, but I'd rather have that than having to finagle a larger piece. So I'm just going to cut at a 45-degree angle. Something like that, and that'll should help round things off a bit. Okay, just like that. So as you come around this piece here, it'll be more rounded. Okay. All right, so I've got this side pretty much about the same size as the one on the opposite end, approximately. Probably do one more wrap maybe later. But I want, now that this side here is done, I want it to dry to prevent gaps, because this is where our spokes are going to sit in. So yeah, no, I'm talking about the wrong side. Well, they're both kind of wet. So they need to dry, and when they dry, they'll shrink up. They'll probably even kind of want to curl in themselves, so they'll provide some openings in here on either one. And so that's where I'll take some extra lashings and kind of fill in those gaps. So it'll look real rustic, nothing real pretty, but that's just working with the nature of how this type of material will work. And then when that's all done, we'll just go ahead and snip off these loose ends here and kind of clean it up a little bit. But in the meantime, to kind of give you an idea of what's to come, so I've marked off with a piece of duct tape here, which end is going to be the handle. So we're just basically going to rib in or fill in the bottom area. So if you can visualize ribs that'll go from one end to the other end, and we'll fill it in, and that'll be our framework. But it's not going to stand like this, so we got to figure out a way and which sticks to use that will provide us with the structure that we will need, the framework we will need here. So I'm gonna cut this one out here, and yes, I'm cheating, I'm not using primitive tools. It's not the purpose of this video right now, to display that. But I wanna try to bend while this is still fresh. And we'll get into the actual shaping of the ribs. But I kinda have an idea of where this is gonna go, okay? And so Willow, like I said, is very supple when it's wet. And oops, but that'll be just fine. But when it dries, you do have to reconstitute it in water, like hot water, steam, to get it back supple again. So here I kind of want a particular shape that I'm looking for, and yeah. So let me see. This one might be not the right one, but we'll see. I'm just to give you an idea. I'm trying to do this real quickly. Oops, yep, that'll be about the area that we're gonna have to stop messing with. So kind of want to work with about this much, maybe a little bit more. But essentially what this will do, what we'll do is these will sit right in here once I get this bent far enough. Because what I don't want to do is pop through my undried God's eyes. You know, so we can kind of set these in here like that at one plane. Okay, so you can see this at one plane. Okay, which will give this an area to kind of bend down in, right? Or be laid out, and I could kind of push this like right up into there, and then what'll happen is now I can even that out, and then I could get another stick, one that's very similar, probably a little easier to work with, not as dense. Yep, this will work. Or if you have nothing but thin sticks, what you could do is you could double these up, and they would work just as fine, right? So once I can bend these, and these kind of been in here a little bit, drying up a little bit. I think I can work with this without breaking it. Yeah. So I'll go to the other side and kind of do the same thing. I'm just going to kind of put this in and see if I can get this to bend inside of the cage here that we're creating. And I know I'm off camera there, but we'll probably get this side to bend easier. So this will be the stiff side that sits in here. So it's just like that. And then we can gently, slowly kind of work it. So this side will give for us, and we can kind of set this up in here and shape it to the size that we think we're going to need to make sure this is evenly balanced. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see what's going on here. And so when it sits, we want it to, my goal is to keep it from sitting one way or the other. But anyways, I'm going to wrestle with this once the God's eye ends dry, but just to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing, we're going to be filling in spokes all the way along here, which is what we'll be weaving. We'll get weavers, and we'll be creating weavers. But yeah, for now, this is kind of the idea. So we're not going to use this one, but just to give you an idea. We may use it later, but to give you an idea. Here comes the precarious part. So I'm going to take this apart again slightly, And we've got ribs that we have to start to fill in. So this is my handle that I would probably take another piece of lashing and tie it on, make a bow on it to make sure that we know that this is going to be the handle. Okay. And I want this to be, when you set it down on the ground, I want this to have its own, it doesn't rock to one side or the other. Now, if you make such a, I call it an egg basket, the other term is a melon basket. If you make such a melon basket, then, it's supposed to be shaped like a melon, then you can have, there's different variations, different styles. You can have it so it flays out so that there's actually, it sits squarely. And so this is what this one rib of willow is going to serve as a purpose. And it's still quite simple enough. I could wet it or heat it up or whatever, but I want to kind of bend it and kind of give it a nice, kind of put it in, give it some perspective, basically. Bend it to my will, so to speak. And there's a end that's longer, the skinnier, the diameter is smaller than the other end. And we're just going to kind of work with that because I want to make this kind of quick and dirty and rustic. All right, so we've got our handle, and I want to place this in the crook here. So this is where a lot of the ribs are going to sit within the crook. And the webbing, meaning the God's eye that we created, is going to add support to it. So I'm just going to gently and carefully kind of set this in here. And so what this will do is it'll give it, as you can see, it'll give it a way to kind of sit in a particular way. Now what I'm going to do on the other side is I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it where this is the thicker end. I want the thicker end on this side and the smaller end on that side. But basically what I've got to do now is I got to take my ribs, and these are smaller cut pieces, and I need to fill them in. And I can, you may not be able to see that on screen, but here I'm filling this in by taking this and just pressing that against, and then bending it and setting it against another rib. Okay? And so that helps give it some sturdiness. It'll also give it some more sturdiness, as you start to shape this. So this becomes kind of a sculpting sort of procedure at this point. And a lot of these are tapering. So there's a smaller end and a larger end as we start to add the ribs. And some ribs may not be fit for a particular fit. They may not be suitable for a particular fit. So we have to find another rib. And so that's why it's good to have an abundance of your material. And so this is the main one. 1, 2, 3. We want to have, of all of the weavers, all of the ribs, we want to have an odd number, including the ring here, the main ring here, which is counted as a rib as well. All right. So we've got 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to add this one as a fourth one down here. And so since it's 2 thick ones over here, I'm going to add a smaller one to kind of sit in there. And then hopefully you can finagle this in a way. And this may be too small, and that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So we'll just have to, we'll have to adjust this because it looks like this may not actually fit for what we're trying to do. So we'll choose another rib, and that's really kind of the art to this, kind of a trick to this, is to find the ribs, and then shape them as you would or as you think, as you need. Okay. And based on the material that you have on hand. Okay. So I may have to go up here with this one. this a little bit too, yeah, it's gonna cause us to be too short. So I may have to cut some more ribs, but I'll come back, and once I've sculpted this in the proper way, I'll come back and show you how I've sculpted this. And then we'll have to do the other side. Alright, so we've got our kind of our basket more or less shaped together. I want it to sit square. If you make it completely like curved like this, it will always kind of lean to one side or the other. But I took a longer spoke on each side of the middle line here. Don't know if you can see that very well, but it's more of a longer spoke on each side here to make it lay square. Okay, when you set it down, and it's an even number of spokes. In retrospect, I do like the cordage for the lashings for the willow. You probably need something a little thicker, because what happens is these start to poke through the edges. I'm adjusting these so that the integrity isn't going to be too drastic, but in retrospect I probably would use some really young saplings. Those people that had parents or grandparents that told you to go get your own switch if when you messed up as a kid. This is what I'm talking about, you know, the little really spindly, the ones that kind of make that noise, really flexible. We're going to use these actually later as middle weavers, but to kind of get stuff started for the weaving, I am going to go ahead and take the lashings that we have. I maybe need one more, but we're going to take one more lashing, and you just kind of, I'm not going to do anything too fancy. I mean, I want everything should end on the inside of the basket so that you can snip and cut and things are clean on the inside of the baskets, and you don't have any hanger-ons on the outside. So really I kind of have to hold this or kind of lash this into place on the inside. And this has been wet. You don't want it too wet, because this what it wants to do is it wants to shrink on you, and then you have to kind of either lash some more in there, or you have to press stuff. You have to kind of cinch it down, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute once I get this into place, because this wants to be obstinate. And this has been a bit of a project. Actually, I'm not even going to play around with this thing. I'm just going to go ahead and just do an overhand knot, which will be just fine aesthetically. But because we have the spokes, and I've already done it a little bit on this end here. I mean, you can see it on the inside. I've kind of going in and out and in and out on this side here, and that kind of starts to hold things into place and to cinch and shape the spokes and the basket into its proper form as you go along. It's important to be conscientious and kind of gentle at this stage. You can use younger saplings, something more real flexible and thin, but I'm going to go ahead and use these lashings. So what I'm going to do is so we'll say this is over, and I'm going to go under the spoke. Again, for you weavers out there, you know what I'm talking about. And I want this nice and cinched up in here, and then now this is going to go over and then under the next one. And you're just going to kind of keep this sort of pattern. So this is under, over, the next one. I'm going to pull this kind of up, and as you start to cinch, you can start to shape your weavers. And then that goes over, and I'm going to go under like this. And while these things are kind of still wet or flexible, I can start to shape things. And then you're just going to go over and under and over and under, and that's all it is. And you kind of want to cinch things down. Since this piece is pretty wet, I want to basically make sure I cinch these down. I have some pieces poking out here. I want to see if I can adjust them if I need to.
shift them over if I need to for shape and form. And then you come over this other side, and then I'm gonna go over and then go under and over and then under, just like that. I mean, hopefully this you're seeing this on camera. So I'm kind of just doing this over under pattern here, and I'm gonna do this more than a few times, a little bit, to match what I have done on the other side. If I have to get another one, I will. So now this, if I have to get another piece of lashing, I will. Now this is ending on the inside, okay? So what I want to do is I want to get another lashing and splice this in there and basically kind of have it follow. And this is a little too thin here. Okay. So I kind of want to have this sort of follow what I was doing before, and kind of pull this and make it act like its own. So this is under this one, over the next one. It's gonna continue to kind of work this underneath the next one. Okay. This one can tuck in here. Hold this in place until we get this locked in, right? So let's see, this will go over this one, under this one. Try to keep the lashing flat if the lashing is flat. If it's round, it doesn't matter. Wants to wrestle with me. That's okay, because I don't mind wrestling. And then we'll get this over here like that. And then so now we'll cinch that in there, but we're kind of starting to get this locked in, so we want to pull this in here. So what we'll do is we'll go around the other way, go underneath, go over, go underneath, go over, go underneath. Now we can go over, and then we start to intersect where we left off at. And that'll start to kind of cinch in or lock in, and that can be tucked inside here, this end up being tucked in. And then what we do is we start to cinch these pieces in like that. I can take my fingers now, and my fingers can be used as a gauge or something to kind of keep the spokes apart evenly, more or less. And I'm just take my pieces, and it looks like I'm going to run out, so I'm going to have to probably get another limb somewhere. I'm all out, and get some fresh lashings and finish this locking part off, which we'll start again. We're starting with lashings here, the bark here, and then we're going to use actual, pieces, actual twigs to fill in the rest of it, to make it a little bit more sturdier and bulky. But this is to kind of keep it together. But as you can probably see, it's starting to take shape, starting to take form. It's kind of got the volume that I think we want for a large harvest or something like that. So I just got to keep, right now, I just got to keep weaving. I'm going to have to go out and harvest another larger piece and get some more lashings ready. And then once that size is done, then I'll go ahead and we'll start weaving in the branches to kind of start to gel things together. So here's what we've got here. It's not the prettiest job I've ever done in basketry, but it should be functional. Been kind of struggling a little bit with some of the weavers. I'm having to soak these in water, and actually using some boiling water so that they're a little bit more supple, because they're tending to break where they bend. But I'm gonna use snips and cut, and they're cutting to cut these out of the way and to clean these up when I'm all done here. But just to kind of show you what how it's progressing here is, let's see, if we start here, I'm gonna take this wet weaver and really, I'm actually gonna go, I actually prefer to work
from my right going counterclockwise, at least for me. So I'm going to insert this so that the broken tip is inside of the basket, because that's where we're going to clean it. Okay, so I'm inserting it here. Hopefully you can see that on camera. So I'm inserting it here, and I'm going to be trying to gentle with this so that this will bend over the spoke. Try to wrangle this in around. And I'm going to need a little bit more material, so I'm going to have to go out in a little while and see if I can harvest some more fresh weavers, which will make this easier. But see, as you can see, they already kind of want to start to bend on me and break on me. But that's okay. I can kind of shape these a little bit. But yeah, hot water does make a difference when you're using this. But there's some materials are easier than other. Grapevines are easier. There's another plant, I can't remember the name at the moment of me, I don't know it when I see it, but it works pretty well. Get this in there. That's what I want. Going to want to split on me, but that's okay because we're going to continue to work this weaver in here. Right. I might actually put two over here so I can one over. That'll be fine. And so hopefully you can see this as I'm just kind of wrangling this in between the spokes. And as I'm doing this, it actually tightens up the structure. And see, if I wasn't trying to build this basket so big, it really wouldn't be this big of a deal. It wouldn't be so difficult. But I'm used to working with larger spokes and larger weavers. And I guess the quality of the materials where I'm going to harvest these isn't the absolute best. I've had better. And then here. And then back around until we're done with the entire weaver itself. And I'm going from thick end to thin end. It's very easier for a splice to happen that way. And so as I work this around, I can start to use my fingers to pull stuff tight. Okay. Use my fingers to kind of pull stuff tight inward here. Trying to get a better camera angle so I'm not off camera all the freaking time. Sorry about that. Underneath. Pull this tight like that. This can go underneath, and we can end it with the end being up because that's going to be snipped. So I'm going to work in another piece here. Hopefully it's not going to be such a havoc. So this is already kind of bent. I'll work this piece in. But hopefully you get the picture. You just got to have enough materials and the right type of materials to weave your shape and form and weave your basket.
So not much really to see here. We'll be done in a little bit. I need to get more materials. And normally I work from one direction. As you can see, it seems like I'm working from two directions, two different ends. Normally, you know, I'll cinch in like one side to lock it into place, and then I will just work from one side, weave from one side. And now I gotta get this over here. Bend this. That's it in here. And that might have to come from inside here. Like that.
Okay, so here's the finished product. It's still quite rustic. What I need to take in consideration, again, just building this quickly to demonstrate how to build a melon basket or egg basket. It would have been best to have the raw materials, the willow stalks, pre-harvested and dried out, and then reconstitute them in water, hot water, and then they'd be much more, actually more pliable. So I have a lot of rough edges and sharp points that I have to kind of take my time and snip around and kind of clean up and make sure that this is actually safe to use. And it's got more volume than my old one, but it's a little bit heavier, and I'm making it for my girlfriend, and so she wants me to embellish the handle so that the handle is not so thin. Because so what we'll do is we will have there'll be a little bit more heft to the basket itself, let alone when you put stuff in it. But then we're gonna correct that with more comfort with the handle. So, but for me, Willow, I guess on the size of it is, it's got a little bit of heft to it versus my old one, which was made out of grapevines and wild grapevines and elm bark. And it's actually, to this day, it's not the same volume as close, but it's actually still quite light by itself. And still pretty sturdy. I've had it for many years and used it for many years. My round basket, which is another tutorial that I have here. This is a round basket made of willow, harvested in the wintertime, and then let dry out over time, and then reconstituted, and then it is quite workable, quite actually usable, and I use this all the time, and it's quite sturdy here. So anyways, that's the more or less the end of the product. I'll show you what I've done with the handle if I'm successful using weeping willow, how do you say, branches, to kind of wrap this and give it a little bit more thickness and a little bit more grip, so it doesn't really hurt the fingers so much. But other than that, this is pretty much it on how to make a melon basket.